Welcome to the era of links. Cimoooooooo! What's going on, guys? It's Cimo. So today I'm bringing to you a video going over the brand new Link Strike starter deck. We're going to be covering some of the new cards and also going into a $25 budget deck profile if you want to pick 3 of these up and build, a semi-viable aggro deck that you could possibly use at your local tournaments. I wouldn't say, set your expectations too high, but considering if you want to play the game on a budget, this is a very good option to go with because there's a lot of really solid cards in here, especially in the common slot. There's a lot of really good staples that you might want to get your hands on. And this video is going to be sponsored by Project CCG. Check out their link down in the description below because you can pick 1 copy of this deck up for $9. And if you want to get all 3, they will send it to you shipped for $25. That's tax and shipping included. So be sure to check them out. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright guys, so here we have the Link Strike starter deck in all of its glory. I'm actually really surprised at the quality of the commons that we actually received in this set because, typically when stuff comes over here from Japan, it's usually not this good, but in this case, it's actually a bit of a surprise, especially for a starter deck. So you're going to get your rule book. You're definitely going to want to read up on this because of all the new rules, or you can just check out my video that I did explaining all the new Link summoning mechanics, as well as a brand new game mat as well that has the extra monster zone contained on the mat. But here's the deck itself. It comes with 3 Link monsters. I don't remember if it's a 40 card deck exactly, but it's, like I said, the quality of the cards in here are actually rather astounding. So we're going to get right into those. I'll just quickly cover the cards that we already know, but I'm going to cover the new cards a little bit in depth as well. So starting off here, we have Link Slayer. So Link Slayer is an Earth level 5 Cyberse monster with 2,000 attack and 600 defense. His effect reads, if you control no monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. So it's basically like a Photon Thrasher. And then what's really cool is that once per turn, you can discard up to 2 cards and target that many spell and traps on the field and destroy them. So a little bit of a built-in Twin Twister-like effect in this card. So really cool. I like the, the flexibility that this card offers. It kind of gets wrecked by Solemn Strike, but honestly, it's just a really solid card all around. So moving on there, then we have the Decode Talker, the main boss monster himself. That just looks so beautiful. I actually think the Link monsters came out to look really, really good. But Decode Talker, he requires 2+ effect monsters, gains 500 attack for each arrow it points to, so meaning that if there's 3 in total, it's going to gain 1,500 up to 3,800, so that's pretty big. When your opponent activates a card or effect that targets a card you control, as a quick effect, you contribute 1 monster that one of the Link arrows points to negate the activation and destroy that card. So really cool built-in protection there, especially if you have something like, let's say, a Trident that's already used its effect. So you can just tribute off the Trident for this to stop something else. That's pretty cool as well. Now moving on, we have Ram Clouder. Ram Clouder is kind of neat. It's a level 4 light Cyberse monster, 1,800 attack, 1,000 defense, and you contribute 1 monster and target a Cyberse monster in your graveyard, special summon it. You can only use its effect once per turn. So this is really cool because all the new monsters are Cyberse monsters, so if you lose your Decode Talker in an earlier turn, you can use Ram Clouder, tribute something else, and then you can bring back the Decode Talker to your main monster zone, or you can even tribute something else for another Ram Clouder and make a rank 4 play, bring back a Link Slayer, and then discard cards to pop your opponent's back row. It's a pretty cool card. It's got a solid body to it as well. Then we've got Honeybot. Honeybot is a Link 2 light Cyberse Link. It requires 2 Cyberse, which kind of is unfortunate, and its Link markers point left and right, so it's only really good in the main monster zone. But it's cool because it bestows protection from card effects from the monsters that it's pointing to, so that's pretty neat. Then we have Link Spider. Link Spider is a Link 1, and it requires a normal monster, so you can use a token for this as well, which is important to note. And once per turn, you can special summon 1 level 4 lower normal monster from your hand to a zone this card points to. So we're going to talk a little bit about the synergy with this card a little bit later in the deck profile. Then we have Bitron. Bitron synergizes with Draconet. I'll talk about these cards in depth. So basically, when you normal summon Draconet, you can special summon a level 2 or lower Cyberse monster, or excuse me, normal monster from your hand or deck in defense position. So basically you normal summon Draconet, bring out the Bitron, and then you have 2 materials for a Link 2, so you can make Honeybot just off of that. There's also, I believe, Galaxy Serpent in this deck as well, and speaking of which, it's the next card. So we get Galaxy Serpent, Mystery Shell Dragon, Barbaros, Cyber Dragon, Photon Thrasher, Xarian Universe. Then we have an Evil Swarm, Mandragora, Marauding Captain, Sangan, Curry Bandit, Marshmallow, Card D, Raikou Battle Fader, Swift Scarecrow, and Effect Veiler to round out the monsters. Then for the spells, we have Psynet Universe. This is one of the brand new field spells. All Link monsters you control gain 300 attack, and once per turn, you can target 1 monster in the graveyard, shuffle it into the deck. If this card on the field is destroyed by a card effect, send all monsters in the extra monster zone to the graveyard. So it's kind of like a mini board wipe for extra monsters, but it's kind of cool that you can destroy it yourself, like with MST. It doesn't say your opponent has to destroy it. Honestly, it doesn't really do a whole lot, but it's kind of an okay field spell. It's just kind of introducing people to the archetype as a whole. Then we've got Monster Reincarnation, Dark Hole, MST, Book of Moon, Forbidden Lance, United We Stand, Pot of Duality, Burden of the Mighty, Supply Squad, and Terraforming. And last but not least, we have the traps. Traps include Jar of Avarice, Call the Haunted, Mirror Force, Torrential Tribute, Ring of Destruction, Bottomless Trap Hole, Compulse, Fiendish Chain, and Dark Bribe. So that's it for the contents of the deck. Let's go ahead and move into the deck profile. Alright guys, so here's the deck I managed to come up with using 3 of these starter decks. The deck is very reminiscent of an old school beatdown deck, but because the spells and traps in this deck are so powerful, it's almost kind of just better to let those get us to where we need to get to, and just use all of the powerful monsters at this deck's disposal to kind of do a lot of the heavy lifting. So let's quickly get into it here. So we're going to be playing 3 copies of Link Slayer because Link Slayer is just absolutely incredible for its ability to just pop back row. That's really kind of the biggest thing we have to worry about is opposing back row, because if we're just going in and beating face, really Mirror Force is the only thing we have to worry about, and as long as we have a way to pretty much effectively keep cards like that off the field, then we're good to go. But it's also good for removing cards, you know, like Dragonic Diagram and other annoying cards that we just don't really want to keep on the field. Link Slayer is going to be really good for helping us do that. Then we have 3 copies of Ram Clouder. This is solely because of the fact that it does have an 1800 body, but also because, you know, we can resurrect other copies of Ram Clouder, we can resurrect other copies of Link Slayer, because Link Slayer is also a Cyberse monster as well, and if we make any of our Link monsters, those are all Cyberse too. So really good for graveyard recursion. It's a decent body, and at the very least, we can tribute something small for something bigger, and I think that has a lot of value. Now, speaking of something bigger, we're going to be getting into 3 copies of Beast King Barbaros. This is probably the best card and the favorite card of mine in the deck. So basically, you can normal summon him as a 1900 attack monster, and if you tribute him for 3 monsters, you can wipe every card on the field. So that's a nice bonus. It's probably not going to happen too much, but honestly, if you're going to make something like Deco Talker, honestly making something like Barbaros is maybe possibly even better. But the coolest interaction with Barbaros is the fact that we're playing Call of the Haunted. So if Barbaros dies or gets in our graveyard in any way, we can Call the Haunted it back, and now it's an original 3k body that we can use to just beat our opponent in with. So that is absolutely amazing, and combined with a ton of the other cards we have in this deck as well, Barbaros is arguably the MVP. Now we have 3 copies of Mystery Shell Dragon. Again, just a 2000 body that's level 4. It also has synergy with Link Spider. If we make a Link Spider and happen to have another copy of Mystery Shell Dragon in the hand, we can just special summon out another one for free, so that's really nice, but mainly this is just here for the body. Moving into 2-ofs, we have 2 copies of Marauding Captain. So the reason Marauding Captain's in here is solely just for extra summons that we can get onto the board. So we can go like something like Link Slayer, Marauding Captain, Mystery Shell Dragon, and immediately get 3 monsters on the board. The effect that he has that, you know, makes it that all warriors or he has to be the only one attacked. There's no other warriors really in this deck that I can think of, so that's really irrelevant. This is mainly just to get multiple threats onto the board, because this deck doesn't really have a good way of doing that outside of something like maybe Call the Haunted or utilizing special summons, you know, via Link Slayer. So Marauding Captain's good. I didn't want to play 3 because it's a little bit cloggy, but Marauding Captain at 2 is absolutely perfect. Then for the last of the monsters, we have 2 copies of Xarian Universe. This is just because we need more monsters, and Xarian's pretty much the next best monster we want to have at our disposal. It has the piercing, which can come up in certain niche scenarios, but it's got a 1900 defense as well if we need to play defensive. Overall, it was kind of just the best card out of every other monster we had in the deck to play with. So that's it for the monsters. I think it's something like 16 monsters, I believe, if my memory serves. Now moving on to the spells. For the spells, we're going to have 3 copies of Potted Duality. So Duality is in here because since we're playing like a very, heavy beatdown deck, Duality is kind of going to get us to our spells and traps when we really don't have the means to protect ourselves. And a lot of the time, this deck is really just going to normal summon a big monster and then pass. So Duality is good to get us to some of our really powerful traps and spells. Now, if you, in the instance where you have something like Link Slayer or Marauding Captain, you can just hold this for your next turn and you can go off with that play instead if you choose. I don't find it too conflicting, and the deck lacks, the ability to get resources, so I really like the 3 Duality. You can cut it down to 2 if you like, but I think it's really good just because the traps are really what get us here with this deck. Next, we have 3 copies of Mystical Space Typhoon. Again, like I said, back row is pretty much one of the biggest things we have to worry about with this deck, so having the MST just to hit cards just for 1-for-1 removal is really powerful, and you can just set it, hit stuff on the end phase. You can hit continuous stuff like, Barrage Diagram, things like that if you're going up against meta decks, and since the deck doesn't have stuff like Twin Twisters like some of the other decks in the past have had, MST is going to be the card we have to use for the replacement. Next, we have 2 copies of Dark Hole because it's at 2, and it's basically the only board wipe we have in this deck outside of Torrential Tribute. So Dark Holes are good, they just reset the field, and it's something very powerful. You can also use it in tandem with something like Forbidden Lance if you'd like, if you want to Dark Hole the field and maybe protect one of your 3k Barbaros to keep it on the board, or if you're in battle and your opponent's trying to run you over, you can use Lance for that, or use Lance to pretty much defensively protect it from your opponent's spells and traps as well. Lance is very versatile, but I'm only playing 2 because it does require us to have a monster on the field, and in the case that it's not, it's going to be a dead card. So I feel like 2 is the perfect number. And wrapping up the spells, 1 copy of Book of Moon because it's at 1. It's a very good offensive and defensive spell, arguably the best -1 in the game. Got a lot of flexibility, you've got synergy with like Xarian and things like that. But overall, I really like the spell lineup in this deck as well. Like I said, really good staples here. Last but not least, the traps. We're playing triple Call of the Haunted. This should be absolutely obvious because, like I said, the synergy with this card and Barbaros is absolutely stupid. Being able to resurrect a 3k body for free if they manage to kill it in any way, shape, or form. You can even do something like use the Ram, tribute Barbaros to summon something else, and then call the Haunted Barbaros back for 3k. And it doesn't really conflict with Potted Duality because a lot of the time you're going to want to call the Haunted during your end phase so that you can resurrect your big beater, and then if you need a Duality during your next turn, you won't be restricted by the special summoning clause on Potted Duality. So definitely want to play 3 copies of Call of the Haunted. Absolutely phenomenal card in this deck, and really glad that it's in here. Next, we have 3 copies of Fiendish Chain. This is basically our effect negation. This is really good because we have Effect Veiler in here, but Effect Veiler can only be used during our opponent's main phase, and that's very limiting. Fiendish Chain can be used essentially at any time, and it's going to stop a lot of the big threats that we really don't want going off. Yeah, it's susceptible to cards like MST and, let's say, Trident as well, but Fiendish Chain back in the day was a very big threat, and in a deck like this is a very good card. Next, we have 3 copies of Mirror Force. This should have been obvious because, I mean, it's fucking Mirror Force. It's pretty much, more board wipes, the better. Now, I know my body's running around at the time of making this video, but we want to have the board clear so our monsters can connect and just continue to get in for the big damage. And wrapping this up here, we have 1 copy of Bottomless, 1 copy of Compulse, 1 copy of Ring, and 1 copy of Torrential Tribute. So I wanted to play all these just because they're essentially the one-of traps that on the limited list, they're all limited. Bottomless is really good. Hell, if you're going up against a Masterpiece immune to monsters and spells, Bottomless can take that out, so that's pretty cool. There's a few good threats that Bottomless can hit, and as a one-of in this deck, it's alright. Compulse can hit a lot of really good things, especially if they originate from the extra deck. Ring is just incredibly good 1-for-1 spot removal. The deck has a lot of board wipes like Dark Hole, Torrential, and Mirror Force, but lacks like 1-for-1 type of removal outside of something like Compulse and arguably Book of Moon, but that's like pseudo removal. So Ring is just good for 1/1. And since this is a beatdown deck, you know, Ring also gets us closer to our win condition in theory. And Torrential Tribute just because, you know, it's just a board wipe that your opponent's gonna can't really play around, and you can just take them completely by surprise. Now moving on to the extra deck, obviously, you know, with the vast amount of options at our disposal, we're just going to be playing 3 copies of Decode Talker, 3 copies of Honeybot, and 3 copies of Link Spider. Now the reason for this is because we really don't have any other choice. Now the one thing I want to advise if you're playing this deck is that, you know, you don't really necessarily need to be trying to go into your extra deck as often as possible. I designed the deck that it can run very reliantly on itself, but there's some cool intricacies that you can use if you have the ability to go into some of these Link monsters. So for instance, if you have multiple copies of the vanilla monster, you can Link Spider and summon out another one just to give you additional monsters, so that's very powerful. Honeybot is going to be a little bit tricky to go into because there aren't many Cyverse monsters in this deck, only Link Slayer, the Ram, and, you know, the 3 monsters here as well, so you're probably not going to be going into Honeybot too often, but that's okay because most of the monsters in this deck are bigger than 1900 attack anyway, so that's not really going to be too necessary. And then Decode Talker, again, if you can go into the Decode Talker, that's absolutely fine, but if not, again, it's not the end of the world. Like I said, the deck is designed to run perfectly on its own, and pretty much if you have the option to go into the Link monsters and it benefits you, then go ahead and go for it. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and also curious to hear your thoughts down in the comments below of what you think now that we are in the era of Links. Are you happy for it and excited, or do you just utterly hate it? Be sure to let me know, and also again, big shout outs to Project CCG because they can ship you guys these decks for a very, very low price, $9 for 1 copy and $25 for 3, so be sure to check them out. Go to the Facebook page, tell them I sent you, and they'll hook you up with that awesome deal. So guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always. Subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. And if you found this video informative, consider backing me on Patreon, because just by pledging only $1 a month, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time.